Shalom and welcome to our Israel Vision studios located in the very lovely Mount Zion Hotel overlooking the ancient city walls of Jerusalem. Our guest today on People Who Make a Difference is Theo Coster, whose creative genius along with his wife has made a tremendous difference in the life of children all over the world. Theo and Ora are toy makers, and they are inventors of toys and games, and they currently have over 150 concepts that have been licensed to manufacturers the world over, many of which have become household names. These include such games as Guess Who, Play on Words, Number Rumba, Quips, and Magic Mixer. And last week on the program, we played the game, what was it called again? Guess Who. And you beat me very badly, but it was fun.
I apologize.
Theo, it's a delight to have you with us today, but we want to focus on some of the historic events that were significant to you as a young lad growing up in Holland during the Holocaust. What happened to you?
In the very beginning of the Dutch occupation by Germany in 40, nothing very special happened against the Jews. The Germans only started in 42 to bother them, if not bother them enormously, then even a little bit. They started picking up some Jews from the street, and afterwards they started picking them up methodically. All the A's, all the B's, all the C's, yes? One of my classmates was Anne Frank, who we called Annelies Frank. And
the famous one from the
Yes,
Anne Frank's diary.
I was four years her classmate.
Wow.
And our name started with a C, and the A's and the B's had already gone, and that is the evening that we cleared out of our house. I heard the Germans breaking open the door of our flat building and stomping around in our flat where they found nobody. I was hiding with the neighbor downstairs, a half-Jew, and he had suddenly a visitor, a non-Jew, and my neighbor asked, "Can you take him home for some time?" And he said, "Yes." So I stayed there for about a month, and then came a man who I had never seen before, but said, "I'm going to bring you to a safe place. Call me Ome Jan, Uncle John." We went by train about 100 kilometers to a place called Apeldoorn, which is, say, some 25 kilometers north of Arnhem. I stayed there with the headmaster of a lower school, children between 6 and 12. And I got a nice Christian education by going every Sunday to church with my stepfather. No harm was done at all. I sang as nicely as anybody with the choir. It brings me actually to a certain period when we thought, oh, the Allied forces have landed in Normandy, and they're steaming forward in a fantastic tempo, and much to our sorrow, they were stopped in Arnhem. We heard the artillery at our place where we were.
This was in September of 1944, is
correct.
That correct? Yes.
Yes. And we were so sorry that they were stopped, but we knew, okay, this was the end. And also, the occupationing Germans knew the end is near, so they were hanging around quite dangerously because the airspace above Holland, maybe more, I don't know, was not any more safe for them. The Spitfires and the Mustangs were having free airspace there and gunning down anything that moved. Dutch people were not allowed to have cars, were not allowed to buy gasoline, so whatever was moving was German. And at a certain time, while I was staying at the house of the schoolmaster, which is next to the school, a company of SS, but Dutch volunteers for the SS, people who understood Dutch very well, commandeered the school and commandeered 2 rooms in the house of the master. Now, my mother's hiding place was not so good, and the people who were hiding me said, come along to our place. The war is nearly over, fine. So at that time, we had a situation that in the house of the master, there were 2 Christians, 2 Jews, mother and me, and 2 Dutch SS, which I think is not a very funny situation. The Dutch SS, I mean the Untersturmführer, probably a major or something. I never talked to him, and there was no need to talk to him, but the man who brushed his shoes and boots was a talkative person, and I must say he was quite amusing. He was an underworld character, people that I never met, of course, in my life. But he arranged for us to eat fish. How? He went to the canal with me, threw a grenade in the water, and the fish would go belly up. That is how we had fish at a time that you couldn't get fish at all. Dutch people at that time were disconnected from the electricity, had to give over their radios, which we didn't, and this bootshiner said, I want to listen to the BBC from London. If I arrange electricity, can you arrange for a radio? Sure. So here we said, all of us, the 5 of us, not the Untersturmführer, but the 2 non-Christians, the 2 Jews, and this bootlegger, Hendricks, his name was.
Now, he was Dutch, but he was a...
Yes, yes,
yeah, he was
a volunteer for the
SS.
SS. You can imagine what lovely types these were. Anyway, that is how it was. Then they left, I think, then they stayed about 3-4 weeks at our place, and then they left for some other place. He was then stationed...
He never found out that you were Jewish, though.
I think that he might have suspected, and he said, why should I bother them? Maybe he even thought that we were nice people and not worth bothering about.
But it was dangerous for your
extremely
person
dangerous.
that was hiding you.
Yes.
Your Uncle John.
Yes. Incidentally, I had to call my mother, Tante Bert, and my hiding parents, father and mother. And you better don't make any mistakes. That could be fatal.
How old were you?
16. So they left, and yes, that company apparently was stationed at a place not so far away where they were shooting those V2 rockets to London. And apparently the gasoline there was very good for cars. And the Untersturmführer told Hendricks, get me some gasoline. So he got him some gasoline. So he was caught. So he was put in prison together with other people that were in prison, like underground Dutch. And this Hendrik said, look, I'm a rather clever guy. I can get out of prison. If I take you with me and you vouch for me afterwards, would you like me to take you out? Yes, yes. So apparently that is how they got out. After the war, he visited us again. How did we experience the thing of the end of the war, our liberation? And it was funny. The village where I was built along a road. Now, as I said, there was no traffic. So no motor cars, no motor bicycles, nothing that made sound. Radios, there weren't any. So it was silent, a very strange, silent world. And then one bright day, I forgot the hour, we heard suddenly noise. And the noise went along the road. And it was a noise of a motor bicycle. and people being overjoyed. So we knew this was, no, that was April 1745.
Wow.
And we rushed out, and we saw a motor rider in a different kind of uniform than all those Germans. So we knew we were liberated.
And who were they?
Canadians.
You know, it's a very interesting thing for our viewing audience that we have this common history, because my father was a Canadian soldier in Holland, liberating a town very nearby, Deventer, on April the 9th, 1945, when he fell. He was killed just, 3 weeks before the end of the war.
Uh-huh.
And you know,
very nearby,
yes,
that date.
Yes. And I want to say this in total appreciation for the Dutch. He's buried in Holton War Graves, which, by the way, it was just the 60th anniversary of this in Canada and in the world. And there was a lot of television coverage, and they actually focused a lot of their coverage on the Holton War Graves as they brought veterans from my father's era there, and the Dutch treated them like royalty. And I want to say this, I want to thank you as a Dutchman that the Dutch take such good care of those graves.
I see.
Every year they honor them, they look after them, you know, the grounds and these beautiful lawns and flowers. But every Christmas and every Independence Day, I think it's May the, what is it in Holland?
The Liberation?
Liberation Day?
I think it was the 10th.
Okay. And every year they put candles on the graves, and they always remember the Canadian soldiers who paid the price for the liberation of Holland. I don't know if that happens in other countries around the world, but it does in Holland.
I can give you a little, not really contra, but a reflection of that too. I heard all kinds of stories that the Jews were so poorly surviving the Dutch Jews. And yet, I tried to count how many non-Jews were helping me one way or the other through the war, and I came to 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. Among them, the headmaster of a secondary school, who was a close friend of the vicar of the village where I was, a dominee, and he was a close friend of my hiding parent. And he accepted me during the war without payment, because who would we pay, to study at the secondary school. And apparently I was pretty good in mathematics because I got a 10. Nobody else knew that I was Jewish, none of the teachers. And one of my classmates was the son of, let's say, the Dutch equivalent of a quisling. Does that make any sense, that word?
A traitor.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the head of the local branch of the Nationale Socialistische Beweging, the Nazis in Holland.
Well, thank God you're here. You are a miracle. And in some strange way, our lives have been linked together because of both of us coming to Israel and building our lives here. And we're so delighted to know you and Ora, your precious wife.
Completely mutual.
And we really appreciate what you do, especially for your family. You're a real blessed father and grandfather. And I want to say to our viewing audience that we would like to invite you to come and visit us here in Israel. We don't have a tour planned, but write to us at www.israelvision.com, and we will take you to visit people like Ora and Theo in their studio and show you how they make toys. I mean, the country of Israel is so amazing. There's so many interesting people here that you'll never exhaust the chances of meeting very interesting people. So we're delighted to have you with us, and we want to have you back again as a guest on our program. And so we're going to say to each one of you viewing today, we want the peace and blessing of the Lord to come in your home. And we say in Hebrew, which means perfect peace, Shalom, Shalom from Jerusalem. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you,
God
Jay.
bless you. God
Thank
bless
you.
you. Shalom, this is Dr. Jay Rawlings on Fact or Fantasy from Jerusalem. The myth that I want to discuss this week is the concept that Israel is a land with a lot of natural resources because of the technological advances that Israel's made in the last few years. But the fact of the matter is that Israel has very few natural resources. It's a tiny country and not blessed with huge oil reserves, minerals, fish, or forests such as in Northern Europe or Canada. In spite of this, Israel is leading the world in a number of areas because they have harnessed the energy of the Jewish spirit of curiosity and inventiveness. They have turned a barren wasteland into productive farms, villages, towns, and cities that are now replete with industry, commerce, and services to support a modern, progressive society. The Bible said this would happen. According to the prophet Ezekiel, in chapter 36, he says, "For here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take you out of these countries and gather you from all over and bring you back into your own land. And on that day that I scrub you clean from all your filthy living, I'll also make your cities livable. And the ruins will be rebuilt, the neglected land will be worked again, and no longer overgrown with weeds and thistles and worthless in the eyes of the passers-by. People will exclaim, 'Why, this weed patch has now turned into a Garden of Eden, and the ruined cities smashed into oblivion are now thriving. And the nations around you that are still in existence will realize that I, God, rebuilt the ruins and replanted the empty, wasted places. I, God, said it, and so I will do it.'" Now here are some Israeli inventions that you may not be aware of, but that you're using every day. If you're utilizing a mobile phone, the technologies that allow you to leave voicemail messages and send text messages and transmit pictures or movie clips were all developed in Israel. That recorded message that you hear when calling some major company, which tells you that your conversation is being monitored for training or quality purposes, is using Israeli technology developed by the Verint Systems technology. The details of your telephone calls are most likely monitored by billing systems developed by Amdocs, the world's largest producer of complex billing systems software for communication service providers, all developed in Israel. If you're in China, your telephone call, like those of virtually all Chinese, will be routed by the telecom DCM system developed by Israel's ECI telecommunications company. One could say that the greatest natural resources in Israel today are the Israeli people. Join me next week on Fact or Fantasy as we expose the facts and the fantasies in this small nation of Israel.
This is Meridell Rawlings, happy to share with you again in his still small voice from a beautiful garden in the hills of Benjamin on the outskirts of Jerusalem. Welcome. Well, these are very anxious days that we are living in. There's no question about it. With bombs going off all over the world, and what used to be contained in Israel and between the Palestinians, it seems now has exploded in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now out into Europe, of course North America, New York, England, and Egypt. Hard times. And where do we go for succor? Where do we go? Just read your newspaper. Is that going to really help you? Do you feel really great after you have a cup of coffee and you read the latest horror stories in the newspaper? Or you turn on the CBC or CNN? Are they going to add to your peace of mind? I really don't think so. But the terrible thing is that no matter where we live, whether it's Toronto, Canada, or Edinburgh, Scotland, or Oslo, Norway, or Sydney, Australia, we know that terror is our problem. It's no longer just those dirty Jews. They'd only be nicer to the Palestinians. It's our problem, and we don't know what to do about it. And we're feeling anxious and we're stressed, and we're wondering about our life insurance, and it's affecting our business decisions. It's affecting our holidays. It's even affecting our mode of travel locally. I wonder how many people in London are as quick to jump on the tube today as they were before the bombs. And yet I wonder if any of us have ever wondered about the bombings that have pummeled Israel in the last 4 years. 143 suicide bombers. We're talking about 4 in London. 143 suicide bombers. 1 in every 5 Israelis has lost a loved one or a friend in a war or to terror. That's an astounding figure. And yet it doesn't help us comfort. But there's a secret in comfort. If we will comfort one another, if we will reach out to those who are hurting, do you know that there's a mysterious thing that happens? We become comforted. The very thing we give away is the very thing that we're going to receive. It was interesting that in the Sun newspaper in London, on the 2nd of June, 2005, they had a map of terrorism worldwide in the last 10 years. And it was dotted with red all over the globe, except there were no bombs that went off in Israel. Isn't that marvelous? How can we be so blind? How can we have such hard hearts? How can we be so ignorant when one part of the earth or one part of the planet or the globe is in terrible stress? Surely the rest of us need to know about it and do something about it. If you are feeling particularly miserable, I challenge you to pick up your telephone, go to your email, write a letter to someone in another land who suffered bombings just like you have, and you will build bridges for peace. I'd love to meet you at hisstillsmallvoice.com.